I got involved in this whole thing in Swaziland quite by accident, as many things in life are. When you're in Makambeni, which is sort of the poor part of Peaks Peak, it's almost like a village within the town. I'd say 450 people maybe. And you'll see poverty that's unreal. People living in conditions you won't believe.
We went to this community called Makambeni, and it is the poorest place on Earth.
I think.
As you go in, you come down a hill and it kind of comes down into a valley, and then it's built up on a hill. And it's mud huts made of mud and sticks. And there's a stream running down from up in the hill and down across in front of it. And when we got there, there's a little bridge and there's women there washing their clothes in this little stream. And it's more like a ditch than a river. And that's also, we found out, where they get their drinking water.
One boy at Peak Central that, he had no money for anything, but literally he couldn't complete his uniform, which means he gets beaten when he comes to school without the proper dress that day. So I got him what he needed and decided after school I was going to take him to his place. We got there. You just couldn't believe it. In this dark room of a house, no windows, one room, one bed, 3 people. No food anywhere. There was nothing. You knew they weren't going to eat that night. So I just spoke to the boy and said, look, how about we go grocery shop? We did the shopping, brought the stuff back. And when we took it into the house, the grandmother, who looked like she was so sick, I mean, she just looked terrible. I thought she was just going to go into orbit. Those are the kind of things that you can't walk away from when you trip on them and you're taken.
Back in 2005, I went to Hampton High School and listened to a woman there from TASC, which is the AIDS Support Center, and she talked about AIDS in Swaziland. Life expectancy. It's 32 now, and so that's the highest incidence of AIDS in the world and the lowest life expectancy of anywhere in the world. So it kind of got my attention. But then she started telling the stories about the 80-year-old grandmothers that are taking care of, all of their grandchildren, like 20 grandchildren in a one-room house, because all of the middle generation has died from AIDS. So I went up to her afterwards, and I said I wanted to help, and I didn't know what that meant, and she didn't know what that meant. But I knew I wanted to do something. Hampton's a place that has got kind of this can-do attitude, right? I mean, if you need something done, it's all done through volunteers. If you need a theater built, you get a bunch of volunteers together and you build a theater. If you need a football field, you get volunteers together and you build a football field. So having lived in Hampton, I kind of knew that background, that Hampton was a place that could do something. So I thought if I could engage Hampton, then we could really make a difference. So I thought, well, how better to engage a whole community than to create a partnership between our community, Hampton, and a community in Swaziland. Far too often we try to impose a North American solution on African problem. And he gave examples of people going over and building schools and building hospitals, but they just be empty because they don't have the staff for them, and in a lot of cases people didn't really need them. I decided to go over, and I didn't know what that was going to involve or how it was going to happen, but somehow Tandy, who was the woman from Swaziland who spoke initially, was over here with Crossroads International. And her contacts over here were Julie and Debbie. So we all went over together, and for 2 weeks we shacked up. And every day I was on the go, and I was meeting with the council, I was meeting with the schools. So now what we've got is a great organization. We've got the town kind of engaged in this. We've got a starfish program now that is really starting to catch fire a little bit. People are sponsoring students over there, and it's a good thing.
I became involved with the Peaks Peak Partnership probably about 4 or 5 years ago. It seemed like a good project to be helping students with their school fees. So that's how I began. From there, I met the students that were being helped by Hampton at Fundaguela High School, we could see that it made quite a big difference to the students. So this is how it all began. So we began, I believe, with something like 20 or so students at Peak Central, and Hampton was very generous in providing funding for those students. And since then we've expanded, and now there are close to 80 or 90 students who are being helped directly by Hampton. My belief has been that the most profound and most important thing that we do here is assisting the students with school fees, providing them with the opportunity to get an education. School is not cheap here, it's not free, it's quite expensive. We talked today to some grandmothers where, the average income of those grandmothers is a little bit more than $1 a day, and they're supporting anywhere from 2 to 5 children, trying to pay school fees out of that amount of money, and of course it's almost impossible. Schooling is a lot more important than just the education. That's a very important part of it. But what I feel is just as important is the sense of belonging that children have when they're able to attend school. And for many of these children where they've lost one or both parents, and in many cases they've lost all of their siblings, so they've lost their contact with the world. They no longer feel they belong. So therefore schooling becomes very important to them. It's a place where it's not necessarily a family, but it's the closest thing to a family that they're going to have. My role here, if you like, is to try to help them to feel that they belong somewhere. And then amongst those Hampton students that are staying with grandmothers or with aunts or uncles, we try to support them in whatever way we can too. So we take an interest in their schooling, we take an interest in their personal lives. For example, all of the Hampton students at Pigs Peak, I know all their birthdays, and we make it a special occasion.
Hampton Pigs Peak partnership is so helpful to us here in Pigs Peak. It makes a big difference to our children because they are getting school fees. We would like to see this partnership growing in terms of making some regular visits, maybe some Swazis from this side, students and some teachers going to Hampton to have their experience there, and those from Hampton coming this side to Swaziland to share with us their experiences. If funds would be available, that would be one of the biggest projects. We would be very grateful for that one too.
Of all the projects, I think that are attempted or undertaken in Swaziland with food programs, HIV programs, and so on, the most effective one, I feel, is the education, providing education for these children. And the rates of HIV/AIDS amongst children who are attending school is much lower than it is amongst those who are just staying at home and not attending school. So it helps in many ways. So providing them with an education gives them a sense of independence. It provides them with a weapon, if you like, or empowers them to make better choices in their lives, which lead to a better life all round.
I'm 17 years old. I'm from Gomas, and I go to Fundaguela High School. I'm in grade 11. I'm under the Hampton Pigs Peak program. Everything is going well. My father died in South Africa. He was working in mines. He died underground. So I'm living with my mom. We're living with my mom and don't have anything, but we try to get those things like food in the house.
Do you have enough food now?
No. And we don't have cement on the floor. It's just a house. One room.
Do you have enough food at night to eat?
No.
Do you eat at school?
Yes, we do.
So school's important to get to eat too.
There's a concept called thin spaces or thin places. And what it means is that there are times and places on Earth where there's a very thin space between heaven and earth. It's at those times that you can kind of peek through the curtain and get a little picture of what heaven is like. And it happens, I've found, at the least expected and most surprising places. And we went in there with a truck, and we had, in the back, we had soccer balls and soccer jerseys. We pull up and all the kids come to see what's going on. And we opened up the back of the truck. These little kids were there, and we gave them soccer jerseys. You would not see happier people in any other situation. I thought to myself, that's a thin space right there. If heaven is a place where everyone is in total happiness, then that's what that was.
2 weeks on the ground there, and it was an amazing experience. We always would take, half a dozen or a dozen balls with us and hand them out to the kids, and it was just like Mark described. It was just the most amazing thing you could offer these kids. When I arrived in Swaziland, I imagined myself being a teenager, leaving Swaziland and coming to Hampton for the summer and then returning home. And from my point of view, I would say that we have so much and they have so little, and that arriving back would be a happy experience. That's what I expected to see, and what I did see instead was a large number of people who were very happy. They didn't have a lot, but they were happy with what they did have, and they were proud of what they'd accomplished, and they were proud of what they were doing in school. They were proud of the little gardens they were able to create, proud of the houses they put together, mostly with their own labor. And I guess I didn't expect to see that, but I was surprised and pleasantly surprised.
I say hi to everyone. I miss you a lot, guys. I'll always remember you, together with the students that I met. I've been together with in the Hampton High School. It was a great experience for me to be in their school, and not forgetting some of my friends. I understand that most of them are now at the university. From my childhood, I've lost my father when I was still very young, and I've had hard times, more especially in my education, sometimes going to school, sometimes being chased away from school because I've not paid for my school fees. Fortunately, the Hampton people came. The Hampton Pigs-Pig Partnership has played a great role in my achievement of my goals. I didn't want to let them down or take their help for granted. I made a decision to myself that I will work hard to achieve whatever I want as they came to my life to help me. Now I have almost everything that I need to live. Now I'm in the last week at the university. After being there for 4 years, I'll be writing my exams now, but I'm grateful everything passed away and now I'll be graduating. Many other young people, if they are not fortunate enough to get to the university, we can have jobs for them, work like raising chickens, working in the gardens so that they can be self-employed. It's just a matter of empowering them to work for themselves so that they can live other than expecting handouts from people. It's good that people come and help us, but we have to know that we have to learn how to fish other than being given the fish, not knowing how to fish. I'm very grateful of the idea that the Hampton people are coming with, of having the grandmother partnership between Swaziland or Pigs-Pig and Hampton. Other than telling the grandmothers what to do, it is better to hear from them what they can do. If you go to them, explain it very clearly that you are not a charity organization, but you are there to create a partnership so that you can help them to go on with life, but they are the ones who have to work so that they get whatever they want.
The politics in the country needs to be understood, and I know we Westerners are very critical. In every place you go and you talk to people, they're anti the system. But I start with the premise that if the country isn't secure, if there's no security, a level of stability in the country, you can't do anything for anybody. It's a stable country because it's an ancient tribal country, one tribe, and they all speak Swazi, and they've had a king traditionally, and to this day they still have a king. The system of inheritance is different from ours. It's not necessarily eldest son or eldest daughter or anything else. It's a system, must be male, and the king has many wives. You can't get into the culture and try and change it, so you work within the culture. The system works for the Swazi. You can't impose our culture and our way of doing things like that on people without educating them to it. And slowly that's going to happen. As more and more of these kids get to school and get out of school, and some will go to university and go to community colleges, they're going to be able to do these things. And I find this even in interviewing kids, that a lot of them are living with a grandmother. If the grandmother's not in their home, they're in the grandmother's home. The grandmother is the only one with giving any stability. His mother's trying to find a job, father isn't there. There's all these situations. Grandmothers are revered in a way by the kids, much as most of us do with parents, because it's the parents who are a direct link with who looks after you.
If you want to put your efforts someplace where they can make the biggest difference, you know, it's AIDS in Africa, but it's the grandmothers helping out over there. No one cares more than they do, and they do so much now, but they need help because they've got huge burdens with kids, grandkids.
I've got 3 grandchildren. 5. Yeah. 5 grandchildren that I live. I don't give my children anything to live on because I have nothing. It happens sometimes that we sleep without food. Even now as I speak, we have no food. I have 3 grandchildren. My children do not get help from the government. She is 66 years old. She has 3 grandchildren. Canada pays their school fees. What do you do in order that everybody in your house goes to bed on a full stomach? She does nothing because she doesn't work. She lives with 9 children. The fathers all died. Sometimes me and my family go to bed without any food. I've just started making a garden.
Hi, I'm Maureen from the Pigs Peak Partnership. I've started another committee developing a grandmother to grandmother, a Hampton to Pigs Peak partnership. It's in the spirit of Buntfu, which means oneness. The concept that I'm not only am a neighbor to my neighbors here in Hampton, but also in Swaziland. We're developing a mutual vision where the grandmothers can be empowered to develop their own projects with help and guidance from us.
Grandmothers are really the heart and soul of the homestead. Fathers are often dead or buggered off. The mothers often succumb to AIDS, and it leaves the grandmothers to look after the family.
We don't want to just come here today and talk and finish. And we're not coming here just to see, okay, we've got problems, let's just give something. That's not what we want to do. We know that there are problems at Makmai, but the Gogos in Canada also have problems. And so we're hoping that we can encourage, or they can encourage us, but we can also encourage them. We're here also to talk about maybe other ideas that we can help you to help yourselves. Okay, one of the ideas that we want to see whether it will work. Okay, you take a sack, okay, and we put inside, you put stones inside and you put soil inside, and then you put holes in the sack, and you can actually put the seeds into the sack and you can grow vegetables outside of your door. We know for some of the gogos it's difficult to move. The idea is you have the sack outside your door, and we can put beans, we can put carrots. You must tell us what we can put inside the sack. Spinach.
But there is a cultural taboo against dating schoolgirls. If a girl is in school, she keeps her hair short. It's obvious when she's out in public, if she's not in uniform, that she is a schoolgirl, and the men are supposed to leave her alone. So that's one thing. And so a girl in school has that small amount of protection. And again, from a cultural point of view, you have a king who is much revered, who has many wives. And the young men that we spoke to were quite proud and quite nonchalant about the fact that they might have multiple girlfriends at the same time. Part of the culture that that's both accepted and encouraged.
What SOS Villages does is continually analyzing its work, it's continually criticizing itself, finding what it can do better, finding the mistakes it makes and correcting them. And so many NGOs just carry on doing what they're doing, and making the same mistakes year after year. SOS Villages is an excellent example of really effective help to the developing countries, and especially here in my experience with Swaziland. There are many other NGOs which I prefer not to name, but I know that their methods of raising funds and the way that their funds are distributed is less than desirable. Their overheads are very high. Their expenses and their extravagances, their staff are going on, trips to expensive hotels, having meetings in expensive hotels, driving expensive vehicles. You won't find those organizations in the poor areas. We go to the poor areas and you will very seldom find any of the so-called major NGOs, major non-government organizations working there. They prefer to be in a high-profile area in town where they can be seen, where their vehicles with their logos on it can be driven around and, hey, look, here we are. But I'm being a little bit critical there, but that's the way I feel. As far as Hampton goes, I think we are very close to the SOS standard, that we do evaluate what we're doing, and I know Hampton does. It's continually looking at better ways of doing what it does, and avoiding the mistakes that it may make from time to time, and we all make mistakes. So I think Hampton is a very deserving organization that deserves all the help it can get, because the help it's giving to Africa and to these children here in Swaziland is tremendously important, and it is very, very effective. Over the past 5-6 years that Hampton has been involved in this partnership, there are at least a dozen students, if not more, that are now attending university. There are other students that I know of who have productive jobs. They're maybe not academically qualified, or may not have gone to university, but at least they have the education. They can go out and they can get a job. And not only does education provide them with independence and the ability to find employment, education also enriches your mind. The more information you have up here, the more you're able to look at other things and to assess things and to make wise decisions. If you're sitting on a homestead and you've never traveled more than a few kilometers from your homestead, and all you're used to is the chickens and the cows and the homestead life without water and without electricity, your view of life, your horizons are very, very limited, and the quality of your life is limited. So, and I'm very proud to be a part of the Hampton Partnership. They are very beneficial, and not in an enabling way, but in an empowering way. When you empower people, when you empower these young people to be able to make wise decisions in their lives, so that as they go into adulthood, they become valuable citizens to society, and they will be the ones who eventually will make the changes that are necessary in this country, because it is a country that is, it's third world, it is, I say, we say developing, I prefer to use the word undeveloped. It's an undeveloped country. It hasn't advanced in the last 40 years. It still has the same problems. There are very few improvements. But I think Hampton and I think SOS Villages and a few of the other NGOs are making a difference. Down the road, after we've gone, there'll be children here, and I know there are now, children here who say, hey, you know, Hampton made a difference to my life.